Welcome back to Cirque Quirk Survivors, where we share stories of resilience and tools for resilience. Now, today's guest, Nathaniel Allenby, is a true example of what it means to rise from the ashes with purpose and passion. From overcoming childhood trauma to cycling across Europe on a journey of self-discovery, Nathaniel's story is one of courage, healing, and transformation. He's the author of the inspiring book, The Cycle of Kindness, and the creative force behind Cirque Quirk, a company that brings people together through art, movement, and storytelling. In this conversation, Nathaniel opens up about how traveling the world taught him empathy, community, and the simple but powerful act of asking for help. He shares lessons from emotional intelligence, vulnerability, and why kindness, both to others and ourselves, is the foundation of real growth. His journey is a reminder that resilience isn't about being perfect. It's about progress. It's about staying open and serving something bigger than yourself. Let's dive in. The Cycle of Kindness, turning pain into purpose with Nathaniel. So when I found Nathaniel, he actually sent me an email and he explained kind of his story, and it blew me away. Like it's an eye catcher. You know what I mean? Like it's an eye catcher for sure. So Nathaniel, if you would just give us a little background on yourself and how did you get into such an amazing journey, and explain that journey for us, please.
Thank you, Cam. Dennis, really appreciate being here on the Shit Creek podcast. My personal Shit Creek runs long and deep. It didn't start when I started traveling on the bicycle. It actually started in my childhood, where I received an extensive amount of emotional and psychological torment from my older brother, which it's beyond me how any 2-year-old is such a master at those things, but that was the situation I grew up with. And I really identified with what you were saying earlier about becoming a victim, because that's what took place for me. I saw myself as worthless. I believed that because my parents weren't intervening on this behavior, that this must be permissible, that it's okay, that I have such low value that it's totally fine for me to be treated this way.
Wow.
And so I developed and identified with this mindset. And that led to even more bullying at school, because it's as if they can smell it. You know, there's an identification with someone who doesn't necessarily stand up for themselves because they're so used to this treatment already. And that persisted until I was 14, when my parents divorced and I chose to live with whichever parent my brother didn't live with, which was my father. And I was thankful to get that opportunity to bond with him on a deeper level, because up until that point, I had very low quality relationships with males, my brother being totally unsafe and untrustworthy, and my father not protecting me in the way that I believed that a father ought to, which has totally changed my role as a parent, but we'll get there later. And so I had developed what you might call an emotional disorder. I certainly could identify as having had PTSD for the massive amount of consistent trauma. I felt unsafe at all times. I was constantly on edge, worrying about what would happen next, was in fear-based mindset all the time. And that doesn't necessarily set a really oddly intelligent, maybe on the spectrum, I haven't figured that one out yet, kid who was really great at things. In fact, I developed an idea that if I became perfect, that there would be nothing to criticize me over. So my pursuit of becoming this way where nobody could get down on me because there was nothing to get down on me for became an obsession. It dominated my life. And many people have learned that that doesn't work. That even when you feel like you've accomplished all of these things, and to this day, I'm still driven to achieve. because of this feeling of not good enough, inadequacy, unworthiness.
And
That
nobody told you you were
Yeah.
unworthy. You just said that into yourself in your own head too, and that's something else that I've realized throughout life as well. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to point that out real quick.
totally fine, Dennis. It is the story we tell ourselves
Mhm.
because of the evidence that we receive. I lack value because of X, Y, and Z. In my
Yeah.
case, it was my parents not intervening, me not feeling safe, me receiving criticism, ridicule, later on, a feeling of abandonment
Hmm.
when my mother decided to separate herself from our family. And so I lacked real friends.
Hmm.
I was associating with the other people who were nerds, lacked social, call it validation, weren't the cool kids by any stretch of the imagination. And so we were kind of friends by default. I
Mhm.
hung out with other people who liked chess and video games and were also used to getting picked on. And I switched schools out of middle school. And in the summer in
Hmm.
between, I got to this point where there was so much fear and anxiety that I started having panic attacks and I would faint in unusual circumstances.
Wow.
But
Wow.
once I got to the point where I was establishing friends, there was an academic excellence in the private Catholic LaSallian high school that I went to. I ended up meeting another guy who was very odd and unusual that I could relate to. And we ended up becoming best friends and went through a terrible car crash at 17 where he could no longer remember before age 13.
Oh, wow.
We drove off a road, fell 150 feet in a vehicle, hit 9 trees on the way down, and neither of us were the same thereafter. And it was an oddly trauma bonding
Wow.
experience, but certainly a traumatic one. And so after that, he went off to college. I went off to a different college, and he was in a very liberal arts school, no grades, called Evergreen in Olympia, Washington. He ended up graduating in 3 years. It's
Okay.
basically straight A's. Was able to have a side hustle that made it so he didn't have any debt and had extra money at the end of college. I dropped out after 2.5 years of a politics program in a prestigious liberal arts school, Willamette University, Salem, Oregon, and got really depressed.
Hmm.
Post 9/11 era, things felt crazy and my trauma had been reactivated. The
Okay.
world didn't feel safe. We were going to
Yeah.
war in crazy ways that I couldn't understand as an 18, 19-year-old. And I really got depressed, totally dropped out of society, spent 10 months just all consumed by a video game, World of Warcraft. I ended up going to the first
Okay.
ever BlizzCon and won the international tournament, which
Oh, wow.
was a real cool feather in my cap, but I was losing my eyesight, gaining weight, and getting really bad acne, binging this game 3 days without sleep in a row. And my best friend came back to me and is like, "Hey, man, this is bad. This is really unhealthy." And he ended up giving me, with my consent, a dose of magic mushrooms. We went on a
Okay.
hike, and by the end of that hike, he had convinced me to go to Europe with him. He had read a book called Off the Map about two girls that hiked around with just the possessions on their back and hitchhiking and very little resources or money or anything. And this was kind of his model that we would follow. And I said
Cool.
yes. 8 months later, I had gotten out of my a little dingy apartment and had stored stuff with my dad and took a plane ticket to Amsterdam, well, Schiphol. And that started what became a 6-year journey in which I pedaled
Whoa.
28,000 miles across
Wow.
10 countries, 30 states, next to no money. basically no technology. We had a compass and a camera. No phones, no GPS. We didn't even bring a bike pump with us to begin with. We
Oh,
were
man.
underprepared, a little bit naive, foolhardy, and willing to just learn as we went. And
There's a freedom
so,
there, though, still.
yes, we learned that there was a real freedom in lack of responsibility. We had
Yeah.
no one to respond to, nowhere we had to go. We had a loose itinerary based on permaculture farms, intentional communities, and volunteer opportunities that my friend had connected with prior to our departure. Many of which we visited, but a lot of things deviated the plan along the way. We had a third compatriot named DJ who left after 2.5 months. And it was kind of a sad story because his mom lied, said she was dying, and that got him to fly back home.
Oh, wow.
And
Oh,
it it was a really shitty situation, but it created a really beautiful one. Kind of like a little bit of the story you guys described beforehand. Him and I became like brothers, true partners, one and one, two-man team, and the only other person that we had consistent, reliable interaction with. And so over time, biking side by side for months on end in places we'd never been to before, with languages we didn't speak, we came to really rely on one another and turn to each other for support and healing about the situations that had taken place earlier in our lives. And
right.
we ended up traveling for about 3 months together before his girlfriend came and I became a third wheel. And that didn't last long. We ended up doing some direct action in England, at which point I had met some pretty cool people, split ways. They went and traveled around Scotland in September, which is quite wet, at which
Yeah.
point he decided, I'm done with this. He went home. I traveled with his ex-girlfriend for a little while, and then I traveled alone for 3 months, which is a really unique and totally different experience where I had no one to rely
Right.
on and would feel really lonely at time. Ended up getting homesick, and after some pretty crazy survival experiences, I went home and reconnected with my friend. We ended up the next summer traveling across the United States in very similar ways, although there was a group of his friends from Olympia who had left before us. So we caught up with them. And in that year, 2008, I spent less than $820 in the
What?
entire year. It was
Wow.
nuts. Lived off of skills that we had gained in Europe, dumpster diving, had some food stamps, so that helped, you know.
Yeah.
But learned how to fix our own bikes, had our own tools by that point. Other than needing new inner tubes, there were very few necessities that we couldn't acquire. We would
Right.
trade for things when we could, and we continued to volunteer. And those opportunities would often give us food and housing. We ended up down in New
Okay.
Orleans post Katrina in the 7th and 9th Ward, teaching impoverished youth how to fix their own bicycles. So imparting the
Wow.
skills that we got. Later on, we parted ways again. He had actually left before that, but we connected with our group and traveled south with some of the members while the group split ways in general. I ended up meeting somebody after hitchhiking across the country. We went to Kauai. I ended up living in the jungles of Kalalau for 2
What?
months. Pretty wild stories there. I ended up
Wow.
cycling down the West Coast with some friends that I met there, and then traveled down into Mexico, where I had studied and learned Spanish beforehand, so that really helped. Ended up
Good.
living around a hot springs near San Jose del Cabo. moved out of there, toured around that region of the southern Baja Peninsula, met some really great circus folks who took me in. Because another amazing part of this story is once we landed in Europe, my best friend was like, okay, I'm broke. I spent all my money on our bikes, our bike cart, and the plane tickets here. So you get to learn how to juggle so we can street perform or busk to make a living.
Yeah, bust.
I was terrible at it to begin with. He was the one making any decent amount of money. But by 5 years later, I had gotten much better and started training very full time, 2 to 4
Right.
hours every day of juggling, past juggling. And I was working on 5 balls and ended up getting to the point where they were like, hey, man, you're good enough. Come perform with us. And I did. And then after spending 2 winters down there, my brother, who I had attempted to make amends with, bridge the gap, extend the olive branch, if you will, was very forthcoming about my journey and some inner truths that I had never shared with him. And so he invited me to live in San Diego. And so I
cool.
ended up moving here, have been here for 14 years. In 2013 or 2012, started my own circus entertainment company after getting connected with the local performance art community. Learned how to stilt walk and puppeteer and character act and clown and mime and do balancing acts and living statues and MC and ringmaster and all this stuff. And I still struggled with interpersonal relationships. Got married, got divorced, had a ton of conflict, am married now, have 2 children, still have a decent amount of conflict. My trauma still arises. And so I have found things like distress tolerance, emotional regulation, emotional intelligence training programs. The specific one that I went through was called Next Level Trainings. There's also Masters in Transformation trainings, Leaders in Transformation, Ascension Leadership Academy, and others. And through that program, I graduated by committing to one serious life goal, and that was to publish a book. And so I ended up publishing The Cycle of Kindness, which is all about the crazy adventures. It's only the first year. I ended up writing a 310,000 word manuscript during the quarantine shutdown of COVID 2020.
Okay.
And then learned how to edit, hired an editor, took the first year out of the 6-year story and wrote the book about that. So it seriously goes into more detail, and it goes into some crazy stories like the coldest day of my life. Day after Christmas, I was pedaling in well below freezing temperatures to the point where my hands with fingerless gloves, the only gloves I own, going numb every 10 minutes. Needing to keep my body temperature high by moving, a river actively freezing over next to me, feeling genuinely concerned that this level of cold could kill me.
Yeah.
Eating while riding, going to the bathroom while riding. I mean, not stopping until 6 hours into a ride when things had finally warmed up. And I've been through some crazy stuff. I got mugged in London by 7 teens, hoodlums, if you will.
Hoodlums, yeah.
Yeah, that was scary and traumatizing. And, I've really been through it in life. I have competed in a survival TV show called Fight to Survive. I have lived in the wild for 18 days on the show without being given food, shelter, or water. I survived in the Colorado Valley for 2 months, just leaving one time to pick up more food with food stamps. I am an Eagle Scout. I just barely before the deadline managed to get everything complete. So I have some pretty serious survival skills. I've
Yeah.
learned not only wilderness survival, but urban survival. And
Hmm.
honestly, so much of my life has felt like I have been in survival mode.
Yeah.
Even over the past 5 years, I've been blessed with abundance. I've worked really hard. My company
Hmm.
has called it cross the tipping point threshold and
Right.
started making better money. We've gotten better clients. We're the highest rated company in San Diego. It's called Cirque
Wow.
Quirk because I think we're all a little quirky and I want to
Absolutely.
honor that. And
I like
so,
the wordplay on that, and I like the wordplay on your book. Uh,
yeah,
those are both. I like wordplay stuff. It's one of my little geeky things too.
thanks. And so to kind of leave your readers with a moral to the story, if you will,
Yeah.
I survived very much on the kindness of strangers, but that book title was already taken. And so I like the cycle of kindness because of the bike part of the story.
Yeah.
And I totally got to relearn, rediscover my faith in humanity. Because when I would ask for help, more often than not, people would just give it. If I went to a house and knocked on the door asking to fill up my bottles with their water, they would often be offering us something else to drink or something to eat or staying in their backyard that night. The
Oh, wow.
reason that I lasted 2008 on less than $820 is because of the generosity of others. And while we can often feel
Mm.
alone and in a place of helplessness, not knowing what to do, who to reach out to for support, I found that when you are willing to let go of the ego and call it
Hmm.
swallow our pride and just ask a total stranger for help, they're more than likely going to give it. And it's
Hmm.
so worthwhile to not only receive acts of kindness so that we can have faith in others, but then pay it forward or pass it along,
Yeah.
where our lives aren't just focused about ourselves.
Hmm.
What I learned in my Eagle Scout training is that living a life of service gives us more purpose, reason for living, and a feeling of worth and value that allows us to feel purposeful in the
Wow.
world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
And
deep
this was
down into our core, we are communal creatures. We do need to
100%.
rely on each other. And that's also why you got to get those thoughts out of your head and say some of those thoughts to other people when you are feeling all the darkness and depressions and the alones and that I'm not worthy because this is happening to me. Like you could go back and say, telling I don't know, telling somebody about it. Well, you eventually did. You became best friends with somebody that you shared stories about with, and so you got it out of your head, and then you got to feel like I'm not alone. Somebody else has felt this way too, and man, it's
Yeah.
just down in our core. It's who we are.
Yeah,
And I
100% agree.
people who maybe can't relate, let me just lay it out like this. Imagine you're a child and the people who you look up to, who you trust, who are supposed to be your guardians, they don't step in, and that makes you feel less than. And I'm sorry you had to go through that, Nathaniel. Obviously, you know more about it, but it's like Dennis was saying, we build our own stories based on what we're observing around us and make kind of assumptions on I must not have any worth. And that's really tough as a kid because you're looking up at your parents who are supposed to be guiding you, telling you, I love you no matter what. But I think there's so many of us that go through something like that. And obviously, I can't speak to what you went through, Nathaniel, and what other people are going through. But I think it's so powerful that you're talking about it because it means people aren't alone out there, right? It means that you can move past that situation and go out and although we don't want to say find validation in the world, at the same time, you went out in the world as yourself, interacted with it, and then figured out who you were aside of who you were told you were by your brother, your mom, your dad, whoever it may be. Is that kind of a safe assumption on what I just shared there?
Yes, we are truly our own liberators, and it
Yes.
takes work. Often in men's circles or emotional intelligence groups, we call it shadow work, where we get to
Ah.
look at the dark side of us
Hmm.
and find valuable insights there. But like Buddhists would tell you, it is not without discomfort. The
Right.
primary tenet of Buddhism being that life is suffering. And that's
Yep.
a hard one. If we look at the primary
Hmm.
tenet of Christianity, it's that original sin is our
Hmm.
way of being.
We
Yep.
And
inherited it.
so we've got these things inside of us that are crying for attention.
Hmm.
Call it an inner child who is
Yep.
desperately in need of help. And if we continue to ignore that call, then we are essentially doomed to repeat the kinds of behaviors and experiences that we're familiar with.
Yeah.
It took
Yeah.
me going through
Negative.
multiple molestations and rapes by other men
Oh,
to
I'm so sorry.
really recognize that something that I was doing totally wasn't working. And I had
Mm.
become a people pleaser who wasn't standing
Mm.
up for myself, who was constantly like coddling and acquiescing and trying to meet the needs of others. I had
Yep.
taken living a life of service to the unhealthy extreme. And
Mhm.
it's taken
Mm.
me a long time to learn how to stand up for myself, create boundaries, and truly live by them.
And
And
get
it's a
Yeah.
balance.
tough skill.
Yeah, it's very tough. And right when you think you have it, something else comes along that pushes your limits, you know? But what I found that's actually kind of interesting is like without the pain, there is no growth. And obviously, I don't want anyone to go through anything bad, but you have PTSD, which is post traumatic stress disorder, but there's also post traumatic growth. And I feel like you were able to kind of find that in your life and say, you know what? I'm not going to settle with what I'm being told I am. I'm going to go find it. And you put yourself in uncomfortable situations. You grew, you adapted, you got rid of the ego. That's a huge thing. Most people won't work on themselves because they're worried about
Yeah.
what they're going to look like, and their egos kind of like in the room at the same
What other
time.
people are
But
gonna think
when
about
you
you.
yeah, worrying about what people think about you, I am so guilty of that, and I've been so guilty of that, especially at my worst times. I would get mad at people for what I thought they thought about me. They never said a word, but I would literally like come
Mhm.
up with stuff in my head, and it was like me against the world. And it was almost like, fine, I don't want to interact with the world. If that's the way the world is, you can stay over there. I'll be over here. Don't mess with me. I won't mess with you. And you get isolated. You pull yourself kind of like away. Or at least that was in my experience, and I've seen it with other people. Would you agree with that? You kind of just kind of get pulled into your own kind of isolation. I guess you spoke to it when you were working on the game for a while. You kind of just like got into a position and wanted to be comfortable. Is that safe to assume?
Yeah. So I'll take it to another level.
Okay.
Humans, on an anthropological and historical level, have this mechanism in our brains where we see things and we create a story. Because if we are looking at footprints of an animal and we want
Uh-huh.
to understand its behavior in order to kill it so that we can
Yeah.
eat today, we need to be able to fabricate a story about what this thing did. And so, really deep rooted in the core of our
Wow.
brains is this feature, this function. And all of us continue to do this in the myriad of complexities of society to the
Wow.
extreme where there's so many deviating possibilities that the one we create is so unlikely to be accurate
Yeah.
that the story we tell ourselves it's like playing the lottery that we're right. And
Right.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
while it is important to really let go of the ego and not care about what other people think of us in order to liberate ourselves, because that's not something that we are in control of. And if people go through AA programs, it's a lot about what am I in control of? What can I do anything about? What can I change?
I
Anything
love it.
else? Give it up to
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah, well
Exactly.
And
said.
so this is a really important lesson, especially for our own healing. We
Mhm,
can choose to be victims,
mhm,
and we can choose to do something about how we identify as a victim. We
mhm.
can't control how other people treat us, what the world throws at us, but we
Right.
can learn to regulate our emotions. And when we're under distress, gain skills through the realm of cognitive behavioral therapy. Please utilize the mental health professional resources that are at your disposal, either through your health
Absolutely.
insurance or through county services. Getting
Yep.
mediation and facilitation for your own processes and your own growth is important. I have sought
Absolutely.
out therapists for years. My wife and I are in couples therapy. These things help.
They do.
It really matters. If you have the funds, if you have the means, I
Mhm.
highly encourage people to seek out emotional intelligence and leadership trainings. They make a world of difference. These people are really out there trying to make a significant impact.
Right.
And
And
honestly, the next,
they'll give you legitimate tools to help you get
yes,
through these
Mhm.
situations and thoughts.
yes, actionable tools.
Yes.
My coaches at Next Level Training were the closest to benevolent, altruistic people that I've met. They were so invested in my growth and personal transformation that it's inspired me
That's awesome.
to coach a couple different times with them as a volunteer.
There you go.
There's so much good that we can do in the world. Feeding the homeless, donating clothes and survival equipment, safety equipment, sleeping bags, tents to homeless shelters makes a difference. There are
Yeah.
always people out there that have less than us. And when
Always.
we act in service, we not only get the warm, fuzzy, good feelings of like, oh, I'm helping someone,
Yeah.
but we're seeing the value that we can bring to the world.
Yeah. Wow. Well said. You are I can he's definitely got like a like an aura around him, you know. He's like on fire, you know. He's it's so cool to see someone so lined up and focused on what they're doing. And I can speak to therapy too, although I didn't want to do it and it took a little bit, you know, to get comfortable talking to somebody. What you soon find out is you're talking to someone who probably has tools that you don't, like Dennis just said, but you're also talking to a third party who's outside of your family, who's outside of your workspace. And it's almost like a sounding board sometimes. Like, this happened to me. This is how I responded. And sometimes I'll say something out loud. And just by saying it out loud, I'll catch it. I'll be like, oh, that sounded a little weird. So it's almost like I'm paying my therapist sometimes to just be like a like a backboard, but it works pretty good. And then, you know, you're able to see different angles at problems that you weren't able to see before. And, you know, that helps so much, you know, and the idea
All the
that,
perspectives.
yeah, we've talked about it before, the ball of perspective. We could both be looking at the same ball in the middle, if you will. And I'll die on the hill that the ball is blue. The other person on the other side will die on the hill that the ball's red. But it turns out from my side, the ball's blue. And on his side, it's actually painted red. So we're literally both right. We're fighting one another. It's because we
And then
don't
there's
see.
180 degrees of views from my side to
Yeah,
your side that sees projectively more blue or more red as it goes from each angle. So that's like a
right.
360-degree size of perspectives to take. And to take it further, you make it a whole ball. Now it's a whole globe. How many angles
Yeah,
of views can you get at that ball if you made it like a globe?
Yeah.
yeah. I had to learn along the way
So,
too. There's part of the ego thing is understanding. Well, I have to say it like this. I mean, I'll say to the audience, understand you don't know the information or you don't know everything. The way I say it to myself sometimes is like, I have to remember that, like, in the great scheme of the galaxy and the world, I am dumb. I am just like a single brain trying to sort stuff out. And if I isolate myself, that's where I'm stuck. But if I open the doors to other opinions, other views, and all that kind of stuff, it helps me grow as an individual. So, it's interesting how that works.
Yeah, connecting to community on our healing journey is pivotally important.
Yeah.
One of my favorite quotes from the emotional intelligence training is, if one person calls you an ass, you can say, thank you for your feedback. But if 10 people call you an ass, then it's time to buy a saddle. And we can't see our own backsides.
Yeah.
We don't know all the aspects of our shadow. We need people to reflect this stuff to us. It's work that we can't do alone. And that's why I so greatly encourage people to reach out to support and even talk to the people who are closest to you and get their consent. Hey, I've got some things I'd like to be vulnerable about. Are you willing to have a conversation about some things that are ailing me, some things that I feel traumatized by or are hurting me? I need to talk to somebody about this, and I can trust you to not be judgmental.
Yeah.
That's
What I
an
heard you
important
saying
piece
right
of
there
that.
is basically, I need help. May I talk to you about it? I need help. And that is such like I don't know why it's so hard to say, but when I just heard the way you just said that, it almost sounded beautiful. It almost sounded so, I don't want to say masculine. It sounds badass. It's like, I've got a problem. This is what I'm looking at. I need to talk to somebody, so I need your help. What do you say? You know what
Well,
I
it's
mean? So
real.
you're
It's
not like,
authentic.
yeah, because I'm so like a beat around the bush person. Like, I was kind of thinking about this and I was wondering if maybe you could maybe talk to me about maybe this, compared to Nathaniel's like, I got a problem. I need help. Can you be that person? And that's such a bold statement, but it's like empowering just to hear that. I hope someone heard that and is just like, you know what? That is such a cool way to say that, I need help. Are you there for me? No. Okay. I'll move on to the next person. No problem. And I think it's freaking awesome.
We
Very,
can't
very cool.
expect people to be available, but
Right.
when we ask for their permission to, let them into our world, then it gives them an opportunity to decide for themselves. Now, a lot of people have heard about consent via, the Me Too movement and all these, cultural changes we've been experiencing lately. And the nuances of it are really important. Before asking for help, you can say, like, hey, do you want help? Before giving feedback, say, like, are you open to receiving feedback? Before I tell you what your ass looks like, be like, hey, are you open to hearing some things that I'm noticing about you and your behavior? Because
Right.
otherwise, people are more likely to be closed off. They're
Yeah.
more likely to reject what you have to say. When we give them the opportunity to be like, yeah, I'm open to this, then they're already in a more receptive place.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because I think that I can take a comment very personal sometimes when it was never meant to be. So prefacing it with being like, hey, may I discuss this with you? Or may I, are you open to this? That's a great way to see it, because I think a lot of us walk around and anything we hear, because we're so worried nowadays about what we look like, what we're doing, how we're viewed, and all that kind of stuff. It's almost like we dread the idea that someone could say something negative about us, although that comment could help us. It's like, your zipper's down, shouldn't be like, well, why are you looking at me and blah, 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 blah. It's like, oh, thank you, sir. I forgot to pull up my zipper. I mean, what's the big deal?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's super funny. And you're in San Diego.
Correct.
That is awesome. And tell us about the company that you're running. Let's get people to come out and visit it.
Sure. So I run a entertainment agency called Cirque Quirk. We provide entertainers, performance artists for events of all shapes and sizes. We work for SeaWorld. I've been a performer at Disneyland, the Playboy Mansion for a Halloween party. That's a hell of a different story. I have worked at fairs and festivals from New York to Orange County. I've performed in New Zealand and competed in that reality show in Fiji. I have been to 5 continents, about 20 different countries, including just airports. I've been all over the United States. I walk on up to 8-foot tall stilts. I can juggle up to 8
Wow.
balls now. I do fire, knives, LED, and if I don't have the skill, then I have a wonderful network of people, from aerialists to acrobats, magicians to you name it. Literally anything that is at a traveling circus can come to you through my company, Cirque Quirk. I've worked
Very
really
cool.
hard to make us the highest rated company in San Diego County, and we're certainly in the upper echelon of quality entertainment.
So
You
anyone
not only
listening
ran
out
away
there
and
on the
joined you not only ran away and joined the circus, you've started a whole circus brand yourself.
Yeah, I had absolutely no business acumen. I have learned everything as I have gone along. I started a second business as a side hustle to sell my artwork and photography. It's called Allenby Art. You can find us on Shopify, Instagram, and a bunch of different stores where you could have the artwork and photography that I've created put on t-shirts or mugs, made into
That's so
puzzles,
cool.
what have you. And
Nathaniel is a
most recently,
creator.
seriously, I always got some kind of creative endeavor. The Cycle of Kindness is shown, the book that I wrote. It is the first of at least 2. I'm trying to get this one with a grown user base. It's about one of the craziest years of my life. It full admittance, full transparency. There is some fun sexual stories in there. There's some really wild psychedelic experiences stories in there. There's a lot of
Cool.
travel adventure. There's a lot of personal development, realizations. Like, one of the things that I realized through juggling is there is no such thing as perfection. Every single juggling world record is a time. Everybody drops eventually. Nobody has been
Right.
able to do any trick for infinity. And so
Right.
one of my stated life goals is to help people learn it's about progress, not perfection. Get
Yeah.
better than you were yesterday. Don't let perfection be the enemy of done or good. Like, work towards growth. Don't be obsessed with this thing, perfection, that inhibits you from improving yourself. And another wild thing is I'm actually back in college for the first time in 20 years. I'm
Awesome.
pursuing a master's degree as a licensed marriage and family therapist so I can help
Whoa.
others like us heal our trauma with the goal of being a legally certified psychedelic assisted psychotherapist.
Oh wow.
There's some
Wow.
really amazing work.
That is the most
I
California
can't.
thing I've ever heard. I'm just,
Yeah. When you get
So
that put
there's
together, I'll come visit. I'll come visit and, do a treatment or something like that, because I've considered that too,
thanks.
PTSD and, the psychedelics and all that kind of stuff. A lot of people are using it,
Yeah.
and it's,
yeah,
and
there's
it's,
a lot
Yeah.
going on in the veteran community too, talking about it too, and I can't remember what it was called, but
Check out the Wounded Warrior Project. It is a
yeah,
massively awesome team filled with veterans, people
yeah.
that experienced real PTSD that are making a difference within that community and beyond, using psychedelics like ibogaine, ayahuasca, and
Uh-huh.
I
even
think that's the one I heard.
MDMA, psychedelic magic mushrooms, ketamine,
Yeah.
and
Ketamine, I heard of ketamine too.
others.
That's one of the ones I've heard about.
Yeah, ketamine
Um,
services are nationwide. And so these things are wonderfully helpful to help people
Yeah.
overcome their difficulties, heal their traumas, and be able to make an impact in their communities and the world beyond.
So here's a
that's
question.
awesome.
When you're out there and like this, like there's a program that's being offered, it might help. How did you learn through your travels how to accept help without feeling without guilt or pride kind of getting in the way. Because I think sometimes a lot of people won't even ask for help because either they're worried about a no or how they might look. So how did you like really kind of just be like, you know what, never mind, I'm going to ask. And if whatever happens, it happens.
So necessity is the mother of invention. And
Yeah.
at first, it was truly a matter of desperation. I was
Yeah.
really hungry. And
Mm-hmm.
we would by a little town, and there would be like one shop. It was like
Uh-huh.
the deli, the butcher, the baker, the grocer, all in one stop. And
Yeah.
and we would walk in there and in broken German ask if they spoke English. And if they didn't speak English, we would hand them this piece of paper that we talk about in the book. We called it the
Mm-hmm.
magic note. And it basically said, I'm traveling around without money. Is there anything that you can donate? Because we didn't even know how to ask. We couldn't speak
Yeah.
the
Right.
language.
Yeah.
And so through that, we got more positive and receptive responses. And our
Yeah.
confidence grew that people were generally good inside and they
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be of help to people in need, especially. And
Yeah.
I really think all of us are in need. Everybody needs something. There's
Yeah.
some kind of weakness in our shadow, so to speak, the skills that we don't have, that it's just a
Mm-hmm.
matter of acting with humility.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And it's
and
sort
it's
of like,
you asking the right way too. Like even attempting to speak their language first. I found in my
yeah,
experiences around Europe as well. I was stationed in Heidelberg, Germany for 3 years when I went to Paris and Rome and several places. But I found if I attempted to talk to them in the native language first, they were more helpful because I wasn't
yeah,
just being an arrogant American and saying and
first.
demanding that they know how to speak English or whatever I needed. And I think the same thing comes down when we want to help people. Like, I feel personally like if somebody asks me to help them or something that's a relatable story, it's much easier to help them than just like demanding that I help them.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know.
Meet meet
Maybe that's
people
just
where
me.
they're at.
Yeah.
Right.
So
That's
you
well
started
said.
And
off with a great foot doing that.
yeah, and when I realized, oh, now we've got this track record of positive response, it became much easier to ask again and again and again.
Yeah.
And one of the great things about emotional intelligence trainings is they intentionally put you in scenarios where you are asking other people for help. And
Mm.
it helps you
Yeah.
overcome that ego where you're saying, okay, this is this exercise. I'm just going to do this. And I
Yeah.
believe prayer helps. Reaching out
Okay.
to God, who we believe is this, benevolent being who's really there for us, who wants to hear the things that we are asking for. If you can't ask another human, start with God.
Yeah.
Amen.
Give it
Well
up.
said.
Uh,
Yeah.
Give it up
Amen. My life didn't change,
because,
honestly, until I like hit my knees and was like, I don't know what to do here. Everything I'm doing just makes things worse. I'm handing it over because I can't even do it. And all of a sudden, my life started getting better. I was like, what? And it felt like you said I wasn't alone. I was talking to
yeah,
somebody and I never was alone. It turns out looking back. So it's like, that's well said. If you can't talk to someone here, look up and reach out
yeah.
that way because that helps.
And there's so many support groups in local communities. You don't even have to go and talk. Just sit and
Right.
listen.
Yeah.
And that can be the stepping stone to being vulnerable, to expressing what's going on in your life. And I have truly found that honesty, authenticity, transparency, and being forthcoming makes such a massive difference. To the point now where people have told me, man, vulnerability is your superpower.
Yeah. It's so amazing. It is a superpower because you can empathize with people and you can share what you've been through and let them know that they're not alone. And in a weird way, we found that it kind of gives worth to whatever happened to us. We're able to take that and turn it into something that's helpful to somebody else. So it makes us feel great. But the idea of helping somebody else with it is even better. I think it's funny that we feel good when we help others. It's a natural kind of response in our hearts or our minds, our souls, whatever it is. But for some reason here on earth, we tend to hold back on helping. I don't know what it is, but I think maybe as we get older too, maybe we mature a little bit and maybe we're able to help more. See opportunities or like me in my younger days, I wouldn't have helped here, but I think I'm going to help this time, so you can kind of grow into it too. So very, very cool. And
Yeah.
one of the last things I like to ask is we have, listeners who are saying that they are in their own shit creek and they can't seem to find a way out. And they might even be feeling hopeless and they don't believe there's a way out. What would you say to that person listening who does feel hopeless?
First, feel the emotions and be grateful that we have the capacity to experience these emotions at all. You're not dead inside. You're just in a feeling of despair, depression, or hopelessness. And this in itself can be temporary. Know that psychology tells us when we express sadness, we relieve it. So it's good to cry. It's good to talk to other people. Whereas when we express anger, our brain is more likely to get caught up in an angry cycle and we will stay angry as we express anger. So instead of expressing anger, it's important to utilize breath work, calming ourselves down, emotional regulation techniques. And then from there, we need to make a goal. Because if we have a vision for what we want our lives to look like, we are way more likely to reach it than as if we are throwing darts in the dark. Now, we might hit the bullseye not knowing where the board is, but it's really unlikely. It is when we get clear about what we want our life to look like, what we want our emotional health to feel like, and the steps that we can take to get there involve physical exercise. Because getting those endorphins, the serotonin, the dopamine, the adrenaline going, it like kickstarts our emotional systems towards the positive. Community, reaching out to others, whether friends, family, loved ones. Heck, if you can go so far as to reach out to someone that you would call an enemy and be like, here's the story I told about you, and here's how I felt, and I feel consumed by these emotions, because it's like holding poison that we expect our enemy to drink. It is doing us damage when we hold on to this hurt, hold on to this resentment. It's drinking the poison ourselves. So we need to find these ways to forgive, let things go, be in a place of emotional freedom, get to the point where we can regulate, tolerate distress, and be better in control of our responses. It goes back to, what are we in control of? How can we choose our response? How can we notice when we're in a triggered place and say, oh, this comes from my trauma. I have been here before. I can choose to pause, reflect on how I'm feeling, and respond instead of allowing that knee-jerk reaction to come out of us and hurt the other person that we're in relationship with. We get to learn new skills. It's never too late to learn, and the better that we can maintain neuroplasticity or learning new things and our brain's ability to keep learning new things, that we are way more likely to offset adult not diabetes, on Alzheimer's and dementia and other similar negative things. It's the greater that we continue to grow, work on our personal development and advancement, or call it evolution, throughout our lives. And then the best way to cement all of these things inside of ourselves is to teach it to someone else. be it in a training or at a support group, or our kids pass these skills on in such a way that they become fully embodied, and you will find that they just start happening naturally or intuitively. It no longer becomes work, it becomes habit. And those are the steps, to the clearest that I can outline them, that will take us towards emotional health, joy, and well-being.
Well, I feel inspired.
That was very well said.
That was
Very well said.
well said.
Thanks,
That will-
guys.
that is that will definitely be a clip. You know, we'll make
This
sure that a
stuff
lot of
clearly matters to me so
Yeah.
much.
yeah.
I really want
love
to
it.
start a movement. That's my
Yeah.
goal. That's my North Star, my life vision. I want to take the cycle of kindness and turn it into an app where we're showing the effect of acts of kindness on other people. Instead of these Instagrams and TikToks, like, look at me, ego driven.
Right.
It's, hey, look at what this person feels when I do something good for them. So if there's
Yeah.
any coders or programmers or app developers out there, hit me up. I want to make something that has a profoundly positive impact on the world, and I need support doing it. So anybody
Yeah.
out there who's in the nonprofit realm that's already trying to do something on this level, I'd love to start by volunteering. But if there's any positions, I'd love
Yeah.
to be in this nonprofit place where we're making a difference in the world. And I love working with teams of people who are making the world a better place. So let's
Love
go.
it.
Let's do this
It-
together.
Here we
Be
go.
that
I
glow.
love it. Well, you have inspired me. I'm gonna shoot out of this office like a rocket when I get done. Go charge
Yes,
after the day
that's
and
the
plan the rest of
goal,
the week
Kim.
and the month. Yeah. So I tell you what, I mean, I'm sure we could go on for hours and hours and hours, but I say we just we finish it off there. And I just wanted to thank you again for being vulnerable, being brave, being courageous. Something a little
Sharing some
snippet that
good
I just
information.
yeah, especially like
You're
the difference
welcome.
between responding and reacting. The emotional intelligence of being able to tell that maybe you're not being triggered by what's actually happening now. It relates to something in the past. So many bits and pieces. So I encourage everyone to reach out to Nathaniel. Let's get the book. Let's figure out any coders out there who want to work on something positive and start working in a non-for-profit area. This is one of the people you need to be talking to. And we want to be on board too. So don't leave us out. Okay.
You got it.
Yeah,
As a
absolutely.
closer, Gabor
Go for it.
Mate is a really brilliant individual in this realm. And one of my favorite things that he says is that trauma isn't the event that happened to us. That was the traumatizing event. The trauma is the story that we created about that event that took place. And we get to rewrite our own stories. And so
Yeah.
work on your trauma, because it will make your life better. It'll heal relationships. And these guys are awesome. Keep on listening to Cam and Dennis and Shit Creek. Thanks for tuning in. And if you're really loving what you're hearing, I'd be honored to come back. You can hear me
Yeah,
on some other
absolutely.
podcasts. Let's work towards making the world a better place and paddling up Shit Creek together.
What an incredible conversation. Nathaniel's story reminds us that healing doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in community, through kindness, and through sharing our own stories. If his journey inspired you, I encourage you to check out his book, The Cycle of Kindness, and his creative work with Cirque Quirk, where he brings people together through performance and storytelling. If you took something from today's episode, please share it with someone who might need a reminder that progress is more powerful than perfection. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and join the Shit Creek Survivors community, where we're building resilience one story at a time. Until next time, keep going, keep growing, and keep believing that you're never too far gone to come back stronger. God bless.